Hey, welcome back to Coaches at Crown Brew Getting Coffee. I'm really excited today because when I first thought of doing this, one of the first names, if not the first name on my mind who I wanted to interview and have a conversation with about coaching was this man, Al Martin, the head football coach for many, many years at Quoin, legendary coach Al Martin. And so I'm excited today to have him here to talk coaching. And before I get to that, I want to thank again the Swinford Media Group for putting this together, and thank Ross for being here today. I want to thank Crown Brew for letting us come in here and do this at this great place. And I also want to give a shout out to Adrenaline Fundraising. And I say this because I think, as most coaches, and I think Al would agree, fundraising is not our favorite thing to do. But it's important. It's a big part of what every program needs to do nowadays because school budgets are tighter. And Adrenaline Fundraising, I've worked with for many, many years. And Jeff Scott and his crew have just been a great group to work with, to raise a lot of money and to build a long-lasting relationship with them. They started off as my fundraising guys. They turned into part of our football family, and they turned into just good friends of mine. And I want to give a shout out to them. If you would like to raise money for your program, they got lots of different ways to do it. I learned over time, call them, find out what they want you to do, and just follow their lead and do it. And it's the easiest process I've ever been through to raise a lot of money to help your program out. So give Adrenaline Fundraising a shout out if you would, if you're interested in that. And they're great guys to work with, and Jeff Scott and Matt will take care of you. So to Adrenaline Fundraising, thank you guys for a whole bunch of good years to make our program better. And hopefully some people listening can tap into what you guys offer. So Coach Martin, welcome. Coach Martin talking to Coach Martin. That's kind of cool. Yeah. I want to run through what I do each time. I kind of go through your bio a little bit, and that'll lead us to some questions. The things that I learned, you're a graduate of Quoin High School. You went to Murray State and played football. You were a multi-sport athlete and a co-captain on the Murray State team. Taught at Albion. You taught at Christopher and coached there as well. You were at Quoin for a period of time between 79 and 82. Then I know there's a break. You went into the coal mining, continued coaching, but you were a coal miner for 3 years. Then to Carbondale High School as a teacher again. And then from 1988 to 2014 at Quoin again, where you retired. And during that period as well, you were also head track coach. You coached girls basketball, boys basketball, baseball. And I love that resume of lots of coaching. And then, of course, the stuff that just jumps off the page at you. In your career, you won 254 games with 66 losses. You were a two-time state champion in 1988 and 1992. You were the runner-up in 3A 4 times. You were semifinalist 11 times, 13 quarterfinal finishes, 24 playoff appearances, and 19 conference championships. And Coach, that is a resume unlike anybody else in Southern Illinois. And I want you to know that I took over the Sparta job in 1990, and I didn't exactly know what I was doing, but I looked about 45 minutes away. And you may not have known this, I may have told you before, but I was trying to do everything Al Martin was doing at Quoin. I tried to copy everything you did, and I did it no matter where I was at, from Florida to Carterville. I was always trying to watch how Al Martin does something because I thought that must be the way to do it. And you've been a mentor from a distance for me, and we've had a couple of really good battles against each other over the years. And so I'm honored to have you here today to talk coaching. And I just want to say welcome. And let's start off by talking about growing up in Quoin as a 3-sport athlete. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, you know, I was blessed with good coaches, starting with my father. You know, my father never played any sports, but he could see that I liked sports, and I could remember him sitting on an old Coca-Cola case, and I pitched to him. He'd sit on that case, and he'd have a mitt there, and he'd have me pitch there in the side yard there. And then, you know, I went into grade school, and we played basketball, and had a good coach there. And then I went into high school, and Bob Carnes was my football coach, and Ray Sanchez was my basketball and baseball coach. So I had outstanding coaches, outstanding teachers, and I was just, and there was outstanding role models there. Don Stanhouse, who was 3 years older than I was, and there was some outstanding athletes that I looked up to. It was a good situation to be in from the, right when you was early in your career.
Do you feel like that's where the seeds were planted? That these coaches had an influence on you, obviously. And did you start to think at that point in high school maybe you wanted to go beyond and be a coach yourself?
Well, my junior year in high school, things turned around for me. And, I wanted to be, everybody wanted to be a pro athlete, and I had those ambitions. But the first football game, my junior year, I tore a knee up really bad, and I was done for the season, and ligaments and everything. And I started to rehabilitate my knee. I went to Doc Spackman, who was down at SIU, a very, very good trainer. And I rehabilitated. I think I spent maybe 5 hours a day, on my own rehabilitating. And that time, I developed a passion for overcoming obstacles, and I wanted to go into something where I helped others to rehabilitate.
Oh, wow.
And so that was what really changed me. I wanted to become at that time, I didn't know if there wasn't much physical therapy around, but there was special education, and I also knew a good athlete. His name was Mike Pullis, the same age as Don Stanhouse, and he went into special education. So I went into special education, and when I went down to Murray State, and I wanted to be a teacher, and coaching wasn't something that I had a lot of ambitions.
Wow.
I wanted to play sports. I played ball down at Murray, which was a great experience, but I really focused on my education as a teacher.
You play defensive back?
I played cornerback, and I ended up at outside linebacker, which it was a great fit for me. I played strong safety, cornerback, and outside linebacker. I learned a lot of different techniques on the defensive side of the ball, and it helped me tremendously. I had outstanding coaches there also, and it really helped me on the defensive side of the ball.
So when did you get the coaching bug? When did that come about?
Well, I realized when I graduated, and from Murray State, and I had the football background, and I had a special ed background, that there were jobs there offered to me. And I immediately had a job, and my head coach at Murray, I remember him making a phone call, and it was in Albion, and it was in December, and I started in January.
Oh, wow.
So I just headed off to Albion and got a little trailer, and my wife and I, we started right there. And from then, Tom Wheeler called me and said there was a job opening in special ed and assistant football, assistant basketball at Christopher. So that was in the fall of '97. So I took that job to be closer to home.
Yeah.
And that was a great experience for me. It was Mike Shafkoff and I were the underlevel football and basketball assistants, and we had a great time.
When I was at Benton as a student coach, I was student teaching at Benton, and Mike Shapkoff was part of the coaching staff, and he was a special guy.
Yeah.
Still is today, but what a great first year for me to have a guy like Mike Shapkoff right there. Him and Freddie Hines and some others took care of me in my first experience. Yeah, when you're applying for a job as a young coach, you get the job, but they shove a whole bunch of coaching jobs at you. So, you got to kind of say, sure, I'd love to do that. I mean, I coached wrestling at Sparta, and I'd never seen a wrestling match in my life, but they didn't even ask if I had any wrestling background. They just said, okay, and you'll be doing wrestling too. So I get it. Yeah. It's a challenge sometimes. So you get to do Quoin, you're coach there for a period of time. Tell me about the decision to leave the teaching profession for a period of time and go into coal mining.
Well, I had, you have to understand special ed a little bit, but I had what you call an EMH degree and a TMH degree. And this is when learning disability degrees just started happening in the educational system. I didn't have that degree, so the administrator came and said, "Hey, you've got to go get an LD degree." And I thought, man, I was coaching football, basketball, and I was head baseball, and I was running a swimming pool in the summertime.
I saw that on there too, yeah.
When am I going to have time to do that?
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate. My brother was in the mining industries, and he had gotten me a summer job while I was going to college for 6 summers. I worked in the mines, and he said, "You have an opportunity to take this job in the mines, and they'll pay your education if you want to go back to school." So I kind of, at that time when I got into teaching, and a lot of people don't realize this, but teachers were low income. I mean, there was not much money, and you coached, you'd add up those stipends that you got for coaching, and then in Quoin, everybody did something in the summertime. The teachers did.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
I had 3 kids, and I was just making ends meet.
Yeah.
So I decided that I was going to kind of gamble a little bit, and I took the job in the mines. I immediately started to take classes at Southern, and I stayed as assistant football coach, as freshman coach, and I called the defense at the varsity level, and I stayed as the freshman coach in basketball, and I resigned as my head baseball position. And I went back to school, took several classes. I don't know how I did it. And I worked 3rd shift in the mines, and I was coaching and going to school. And I can remember having to do some student teaching even. I went to Heron Elementary and did some, I had to do student teaching in the LD classroom. So it was just something that you don't know how you do everything, but then I'd get laid off, and I'd always find something. I'd substitute teach, and I'd make ends meet, but then I got laid off permanently after about 4 years. Yeah. But I'd made some money, made some money, and that's what I wanted to do. And I also got my education. So that's when Carbondale offered me a job as an assistant football, basketball, and assistant baseball. And once again, it was a great experience educationally for me to work in their school system. Margaret Hollis was the principal, outstanding principal. I worked under John Helmick, Doug Woolard, Chico Jackson, Larry Jackson in baseball. Just worked with some wonderful people and took something from each one of them. It was a great experience. It was hard for me to leave Carbondale. I really liked Carbondale. Wow.
I was going to ask you about your influences, but you've already mentioned so many of these key individuals that you work with, and you're right. That's impactful when you get around people and see how they do it and what they do, and it's a big deal. It kind of shapes the coach you will become later on, and so that's really awesome. So I notice a trait amongst this is the number of sports you coached throughout your career. And even when you became highly successful as a football coach, you were still coaching girls basketball, boys basketball, track for many, many years. Tell me about what the importance of that, the coaching more than just football for you.
Well, I hate to tell you this, maybe, but I wanted to make some money. I didn't have
I love the honesty.
I never did finish my master's degree.
Yeah.
And I needed the money. Yeah. And a lot of coaches did that.
Sure.
But to me, whenever I took a job, I always told myself, and I tell the athletes, this is the most important job that I've got right now. I don't care what sport it was. Yeah. And I went into it, and I got the track job. Bob Corns had a successful track program. I came in, and in Quoin, we always felt like the track program was part of the football program.
That's right.
So we worked hard at it. I had some wonderful assistants, in track, and it was something that it went right along with your winter conditioning, your lifting of weights, and then we'd go out and we'd compete, and that it was all a great experience. In basketball, worked with Roger Kraft, outstanding basketball coach, outstanding coach, and of course with Bob Corns, worked with him as an assistant, and I had outstanding assistants around me. But that was, I wanted, and I tell the kids, whatever sport you're in, you be the best athlete that you can possibly be. Don't, and I wanted to carry over or set that example to be the best coach that I could be.
Yeah, I've seen, and I'm sure you know of it too, where coaches have their sport and then they get stuck in another sport and they don't give it everything they've got. And I really appreciate the fact that you made sure that was a valued experience for those kids. And I know that if you're going to be coaching other sports, your off-season program, tell me how that worked for you, because obviously if you're coaching basketball and you're coaching track, you've got football kids that are in an off-season program. So I assume you turned that over to some trusted assistants.
Yes. I wasn't a PE teacher, so we had athletic PE the last period of the day, and thankfully the administration set up my planning period the last period of the day, so I would spend a lot of time every day. I'd go down to the athletic PE and help with that, and then sometimes, a lot of times as an assistant boys coach or assistant, I was assistant girls basketball coach, you would have practice early in the morning or you'd have it later at night. So, you just put in some long hours sometimes.
Yeah.
You get home and it'd be, then you'd have to go back to practice.
Yeah.
And, that's just the way it is. And, you just kind of developed a little bit of a routine where you knew you had to spend the time with your athletes. And I had some, outstanding people, John Gross and Bob Shaw in the weight room, and they did a great job for me. And it was just something I was fortunate that we all worked together on it.
I am sure that, well, first of all, I think when I think back to those early days of my coaching career, I felt like Harrisburg and Quoin were setting a very strong standard. And I think Harrisburg had developed this lifting program that I think was really beneficial to them before others people were doing it. And I felt like Quoin and their track program was benefiting you in ways before others were doing that. And I think today everyone's lifting and everyone's doing speed work, but you guys were kind of on the cutting edge of that. I think that's a real key. And I think the fact that you gave it so much effort, you took ownership in that track program, I think it paid you great dividends. And I think I love the idea. You kept a lot of your coaches with you for many, many years, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that, like having that staff continuity.
Well, that's something that it's just hard to explain. I think everybody just kind of bought in to what they were doing.
Yeah.
And, they all had their strengths, and their strengths were a big part of the program. And what the success I had as a head coach was they knew, because I'd tell them, was because of their knowledge and their hard work. And I was just honest with them. We wouldn't be here without you guys. You know that. And a lot of them volunteered, and that's why you may ask me the question later on, but that's the big reason why I did volunteer for 9-10 years after I retired, is because those guys that were the head coaches had volunteered for me. And
That's
I
great.
thought,
That's so great.
It's time for me to pay back a little bit,
Yeah.
and I did. But those guys, they would take things serious.
Yeah.
Sometimes I felt like they took losses harder than I did. And they'll tell you that they took the losses harder than I did. and I'd have to say, hey guys, we did the best we could.
Yeah.
We called the plays, and sometimes it doesn't work out. But had a great staff.
Yeah.
We just we worked well together.
There's just no substitute, is it, for that to sit back, and sometimes I would be at practice and I would just stop coaching for a moment and watch my coaches coach, and I would see the ownership they took in it, like you said, the passion they had for it, and sometimes my volunteer guys were just as into it as my paid assistants, and that's a really cool feeling to see the ownership that others take in it. That's special.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really something.
Let's talk about this. So one of the things that I love about the Quoin program, and that I watched from a distance all those years, was your ability to kind of be impervious to graduation. I mean, listen, as an opponent or possible opponent of yours, whether in your conference or whether in the playoffs, there's always hope every year, because people say, well, Quoin graduated so many seniors. And so every coach would think, we're going to get them next year because they graduated. And sure enough, you guys would just reload and be really good again. So what I thought was great was your ability to develop other players to fill in when you had good kids graduate. And you did it year after year after year. Can you talk on that a little bit about what was the key, you think, to enabling you to have that longevity, that long-term success, even though you're graduating outstanding players year after year, but Quoin would just come right back and be at the high level again?
Well, that's something I really haven't thought about how we did that, but we was able to get experience, to gain experience with kids when they were sophomores and juniors, and we would play those kids. We'd get up, and we never was concerned about how many points we scored or whatever. We was concerned about winning the ball game, and as a coach, when you feel like you can start substituting, and we started substituting. And also our practices were I felt like very competitive, in the fact that we really emphasized how important our third and fourth stringers were, because they were running the scout team.
Yeah.
And we really, we had a coach that did nothing but coach the scout team and to run our opponents. And you learn a lot of football that way. And we had those kids, and we said, hey, we don't win on Friday night without you guys.
Oh, that's great.
Doing your job on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, And that's what I think we really built a lot of competitors, and a lot of technique, and a lot of they bought into it. As far as we just needed them. We needed them. We needed them to do their part, and because we would get a lot of reps, and we didn't waste any time out on the practice field. We wanted everybody to work, and it just kept on. And before long, they're juniors and seniors, and they're there.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm asking you these questions, and you said you weren't sure how you did it, and yet I think in part when I'm listening to you, you know exactly how you did it, because you made those kids feel important, valued. Those kids had ownership in what was going on. I love the idea you were willing to substitute kids out, not worry about the score, keeping a shutout. It helped that Quoin was good, so you got ahead to get those kids in, but that's true. But also the fact you're playing 10, 11, 12, 13 games, sometimes 14 games. So you've got this extended almost half a season, and you got more practice time with those kids, and they're seeing the older kids show how it's done. So, I mean, there's a lot of nuggets, Coach, in there about how you did that, because I think it's so easy for you and I in our business to get caught up in the starters and those guys that are going to play on Friday. But I think a great coach like yourself sees the future in those guys that are giving them that valued look every day. And you got a coach who's taken ownership in the scout team so those kids feel a part of it, and you telling them what you're doing matters. I think that is so great. Yeah, that's really cool, Coach. Yeah. What was the best part of this profession for you? I know that's an open-ended question, but when you look back at all the years you did it as a volunteer at different schools, different sports, what's the best part in your mind of coaching? Or is there one thing?
I would say just getting down in the trenches and working with young athletes. Just, I say young athletes because I did coach girls.
Sure.
And just to get down, and a good friend of mine I was his assistant, and he was the head girls track coach. He was my assistant manager at the swimming pool. We became very close friends. But he made a comment one time, and he said, and he was quite a character. He said, you know, athletics is the last way that you can really teach character in kids.
Yeah.
And without knowing that you do it, sometimes you develop a lot of character in kids. And it's, I guess, and then as I got older, I realized the opportunity that I had to develop, attitudes and morals and values.
Yeah.
And I know I would take Thursday nights, at the night before the game, we'd have a team meeting, and I'd always have a little something that I would draw from my faith that I could reflect. And I thought, man, how many people have this opportunity? And I thought I think that's truly a blessing right there.
Amen. It's a platform.
Yes.
And there's a saying out there that says, sports doesn't develop character, sports reveals character. And I think that is so off base. It does both. I think we have a unique opportunity with our position, fair or unfair, but we have a magnified voice because we're a head coach in a sport, to develop character in kids and share our experiences and hold them accountable and teach them lessons. And the classroom is a place you can do it too, but the classroom is very difficult. You have kids for a shorter amount of time, and that football field, or the basketball court, those are special places you can really go to work. I want to touch on this because I think the teaching profession, I think anyone that teaches is a bit of a hero if they feel that the passion and the calling to do it. But there ought to be a special place for the special education teacher. And I want to tell you that I'm humbled by your dedication to that for so many years. Can you tell me the impact that had on you? And it doesn't have to be as a coach, but working with special needs kids every day, what the impact of that was on you as a person, as a teacher, as a coach?
It's something that I don't know. I didn't want anybody to bother me during the day. And I would make sure, and my wife, Sharon, would tell you that I do my homework at night on my football. I'd sit there and for an hour and a half, and, look at whatever I had to look, but I'd make sure my practice schedule was ready to go.
Yeah.
Because when I got to school and it was time for me to teach, I had a wonderful teacher's aide, and she helped me tremendously. But her and she was like my assistant, on the field. Her and we'd go to work. And we'd get to work. And I didn't want anybody to bother me. I didn't want any disruptions from athletics, from kids coming in. And, I didn't want to hear it because that was what I wanted to do. That's what I went to school for. Yeah. I love to teach math and science, and I still teach a shop class, first hour a day, and that's what I wanted to do. And they were just as important and they knew it. Yeah. They knew it as the athletes on the field.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And I can remember one Friday we was after school one Friday, and I was walking down the hall, and it was kind of a dreary day, and this young kid that I had in class all day, he asked me, he looked at me, he said, "What are you going to do tonight?" Because we had a game that night Friday. And I said, "Well, I don't know. What are you going to do?" He said, I don't know. And he asked me, "Are you going to go to the game tonight?" I said, "Yeah."
That's awesome. He
didn't
even know. Yeah,
He
exactly.
didn't even know I was a head
That is
football
great.
coach or what.
That is great.
And, that's where I wanted to.
But that just speaks volume to the fact that he had a relationship with you that had nothing to do with your coaching. It's just so cool. Yeah, that is really special. It really is. It's funny as I sit back in retirement now and I get the chance to do some things. You and I talked before we got on air about reflecting that back on our careers now. And I always felt reluctant to do that. And I've done it more now since I've been retired. And there's a lot of things happening in football and in coaching. And I look now, they're talking about pulling back a little bit and having shorter practices. They're looking at more recovery. They're looking at more managing practice better so you're there 90 minutes instead of 3 hours. And my first thought is, Al Martin was doing that a long time ago, but they're packaging it and making money off of it. And you were doing this, Al, way before anybody else. And I remember when we got into the playoffs in 1996, and we had no idea we were going to run into each other. But I can remember our practices begin to get shorter and shorter and shorter. And I was asked by a parent one time, "Well, it's the playoffs. Why are you quitting practice so early?" And I promise you, my answer was because that's what Al Martin does. So I said, I know for a fact he cuts practice shorter as the season gets longer. And so if he does that, I'm going to do that. And I think that's a new trend now that's really growing in sports. There's Tony Holler has something out called Feed the Cats, and it's about speed and recovery, and I think it's wonderful. But I think speed work, track program, recovery, I mean, you were doing that stuff. So hats off to you. Did that come from you? Did that come from someone else you learned that from? Just experience? Where did that come from?
Well, two coaches that I worked for. Roger Kraft was one of them, a great organizer. And he would, keep his practices. He had a wonderful way of keeping that practice running smoothly. And that helped me. And the kids enjoyed it.
Yeah.
They enjoyed it. And then John Helmick at Carbondale. John would cut his practices down. He'd keep it short. I don't care if we was playing Murfreesboro, it would be an hour and a half or whatever, and we'd be, he'd expect the assistant coaches to do their job, and we'd do the teamwork.
Yeah,
we'd get out of that, and I thought, it worked out pretty good.
Did you ever think we're done already?
Yeah. And to me, I always feel like, and it's something that stuck with me, later in life, if I'm in a meeting or something, I'm with a group, is that you always want them to want to come back the next day.
Amen. Leave them wanting more.
Yes. You want them to say, "Hey, I want to get back there," or I feel good about it. And at the end of the season, you want your team to still have that desire to play the game and not dread coming to practice or whatever. So.
No, that's great. And I think more and more, I learned that what I did from you, and I'll be honest with you, I kind of got away from it and let the grind of coaching kind of take over. And I was using up-tempo practices, but there's nothing wrong with that. Keep the kids busy. But I think I was doing it to my detriment, where we were playing our best football about week 4 or 5 for a period of time and kind of tailing off towards the end. And I had to pull back and say, wait, you forgot one of your great lessons. As that season, you want your kids fresh and ready to go and excited, not just physically, but mentally. You want them excited for that end of the season. So that's great that you were doing that way before anybody else. So as you coached, you began before me, but I joined coaching in what I said on a previous podcast, kind of in the old school era. And over time, as you and I went through our careers towards the end, coaching changed. Kids begin to change. So did you feel the need to adapt in any way to changes, or was your style pretty able to navigate the old school days to the new coaching?
No, I say I had to change. I kept my fundamentals.
Yeah.
But you have to change, not big changes on it.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I came in and I'd love to just talk football. Just talk defenses and whatever. But I just take a second and talk. But I came in, I played a defense that we played down at Marion, 50 slide defense for a couple years. We had success, of course, in 90 and 88, and won the state. And another year, we had another good year. And then this young coach comes to Sparta, and he's running a spread offense. And I'm running around. We can't get our kids lined up right. And we're in this 50 slide, and we can't do what we want to do. And pretty soon, we get through the year. But, you introduced the spread offense. You and Chuck Buddy and that causes you to change. A good young coach, and hats off to you, but we switched from a split 50 to a 40 look because we had to be able to adjust to go against the spread offense, and pretty soon there'd be another spread offensive team, and then we'd play Harrisburg, a double tight, or we'd play Anna Jonesboro, a different. We had to have a defense that we could move from seeing a spread to seeing a double tight without making major changes.
Yeah.
So that's just something there, the defensive side of the ball, and then that's you constantly had to make changes.
Yes.
And then we went to a 4-3 look, and then we went back to the 4-4 look, and then but it was according to the talent that we had and the types of offenses and that we had. And you have to keep changing, and that might be one of the reasons that as I got older, I was 60 or so. I was still head coach, and I couldn't. I lost my desire to keep on top of the game.
Yes.
I guess because I was kind of wore out. I could still coach. The fundamentals and one thing, but I kind of lost the desire to keep on top of the game. And I don't think people realize this, of course you do, how you have to stay on top. And I admire what you did because you did a tremendous job of staying on top of the game.
It was exhausting.
Yes.
And the thing that I noticed about it, Coach, was that it wasn't just doing it. It was constantly worrying about, am I falling behind? I had trouble relaxing at home at night, thinking I need to be watching something on YouTube, or I need to be studying or calling a coach or watching something on, you know what I mean? Like I felt like I couldn't relax because somebody out there is getting an edge on me. Mm-hmm. So I would go on vacation, and sure enough, I would find a reason to start thinking X's and O's, and I couldn't relax. Mm-hmm. So I just, like you said, I called it chasing the white rabbit. You never felt like you caught it, and if you did, and you might win a state title, you had to let it go and chase it some more, and it never ended. And then I noticed there were younger coaches that were more energetic, and they were faster than me at chasing that rabbit, and they had new and creative ways of doing it. And you're right, I don't know that it drove me out of the game, but I think it wore me out, the constant mental worry about where am I and what do I need to be doing to keep up. We had a local coach here who got out of coaching for a while, just for a brief time. And he got back in and he told me, he goes, I can't believe how much the game changed in the 4 or 5 years I was out. And I said, yeah, it does, doesn't it? And when you're in it, you don't know that until you step back. And I can already see changes taking place. And I've been out just 1 year and I can see new things coming. And I think they're coming faster than ever, with technology and internet and stuff like that. So talk about Nick Hill a little bit. That's a cool story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really got excited a couple of weeks ago. You think you're retired, and I got excited whenever we've we went down to Murray State and watched them play Murray State, and then we've seen some home football games, and I really started getting excited about his team.
Yeah.
And the last couple of weeks we've been down there, and his kids are they're playing, and I went down and I wanted to personally, we text him, but I wanted to personally just say, hey, you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
You're doing a great job. And I walked out on the practice field, and I know and I'd been doing some work, and they must have thought I was some janitor or whatever. And I thought, hey, some guy asked, what are you doing? I said, just give me a second. And Nick came over, and I said, Nick, I know from going through everything what you're doing. I said, you're doing a heck of a job. And I thanked him. I thanked him because he's put, what he's been going through. Of course. Late in the year.
Of course.
You're tired.
Oh.
The kids are tired, but they're still playing with the spirit.
They are.
They're playing with the spirit to win and to do well. And as long as they keep doing that, they'll be fine. Win or lose, they're going to be fine.
Well, I know he's still doing a lot of things he learned from you, and when I talk to Nick, and we have coffee a few times a year, he and a group of guys, and we text a little bit, and he just lights up when I bring up your name, man. He thinks the world of you and what you meant to him, and kind of springboarding him into the coaching profession. So he's a great young man and doing a great job. And you look at that schedule they have to play every year in that conference.
Oh, my goodness.
I often say that you could have a really good team and not have a lot to show for it just because maybe the schedule is a little better than you this year. But I'm proud to see the fact that he's really laying a strong foundation there. And you talk about building a culture of still doing what you and I tried to do, and that's those values and those ethics and those morals. He's never given up on that, even on kids at the college level. So I'm proud of him for that. It's a tough job, man. A college coaching, high school's tough, but college is a different level.
It's a different. You got a good ball player. The next year they might be moving on. And it's just tough. And then you have to reload. You have to find something. It's tough.
And that transfer portal is making it so a guy you thought you had is slipping away from you. But thank goodness you can pick up some more. But it's tough, and I think Nick is doing a great job of navigating some of these new waters that are out there for college coaches. It's tough business. But you mentioned earlier you continued coaching after you left head coaching, and I love the idea. You said you wanted to volunteer because of what others had done for you. What was that like for you to go back and coach and not be the head coach? Because I hear coaches think about that.
Some friends of mine that we get together from Kentucky, from where we played ball together, and the first thing they told me when they heard that I was going to help, said, how do you think that makes your head coach feel if you're around like that? I said, well, I don't know. So I immediately, before I started, I said, hey, now listen, I'm going to help you. But I don't want to make you feel bad or anybody else feel bad.
Right.
Or I'm not looking over your shoulder. I would not even go into the coach's office. They'd give me a practice schedule. I'd go to the Sunday night meeting. That'd be it. But I didn't spend any time because I didn't want to get involved in any discussions. If the players were there, I would coach them, and we would have our breakdown, and I would coach them, and I would coach every play of the offensive, the team offense. I would be watching my players and coaching them and coaching and coaching, and it was just all about their steps and all about this and all about what they're doing, offensively, and then that was it. I mean, there was nothing else. They made the decisions, and I kind of felt it like, and I watched other professions, and I seen doctors, and I'd see lawyers, and I'd see farmers, and I'd see other professions that when they got older, they would still help. They'd still have a helping hand in their business or in their field. There was doctors who were still working in the field. There was teachers, and you see more and more teachers come in and teach. Sure. So I looked at other professions, and I thought, well, other professions, and I just tried to do it in a way that I didn't want to, professionally, and a way that I don't know.
Did you miss it? Did you miss being the head coach as you did that, or were you perfectly content with right where you were?
I missed it at times.
Yeah.
But then when I realized how much work went in on it, and I wasn't,
Yeah.
I didn't really want to do all that.
Yeah.
I didn't miss it too much. But you know, I don't think there's a head coach probably alive that can say that there's a time when you think, man,
I know.
I think I could still do this.
Yes. I think,
I think any coach is.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. And I think I miss the game planning and I miss the play calling a little bit. Yeah. But you're right. The other stuff on the periphery, I don't really miss it.
And read checks.
Yeah.
Doing this.
Yeah. Chasing that white rabbit, right? What is life like now without football? So what's going to keep the legendary Al Martin busy now?
Well, you know, my family, and I still go to football games. I still like to watch the game.
Yeah.
But I travel. I go to Colorado 3 times a year. I go to California. My family's spread out.
Yeah.
I spend time with my family, and I spend time with my family. And oh man, you know, your family sometimes as a coach, you don't, during the season, I always told people you didn't have days off, you had hours off. And then even in the off season, it was a busy time. And now I don't want to have any excuses. I don't want to say, hey, I've got a freshman football game. You know, and I would miss some freshman games to go to a family deal, to see my grandkids or whatever. I would miss them, and I would just go, and that's what I do now.
Yeah, that's great.
I keep myself busy.
Yeah,
I'm very, very, very busy with my family, with my church, with different things. I mean, I'm very busy.
And you're good.
Yeah,
you're good.
I'm good with it.
Last question, and I, you know, one of the things I just wanted to point out before we're done is the fact that your playoff record is simply astounding. I think it's. I don't have it on here just exactly what your playoff record was, but it was astounding, and I think you've got a lot of legacies, Coach. Some on the field, many off the field. But the fact that you were so successful in the postseason, for the reasons you've cited so well here today, is something that I don't know that anyone will ever touch. Your ability to be that good when it mattered most is pretty awesome. So I want to make sure I point that out. The last thing is the town of Quoin. You're a Quoin guy. Tell me what the town of Quoin has meant to you as a student, athlete, coach, because it's got to be a special place in your heart.
Yeah, it is. It's something, and you know, in any community, and especially a community like Quoin, it's, you see things, and you spend a lot of time on trying to keep your community at that level that you know that you've seen it and that you lived. And it seems like I've spent a lot of my time on trying to keep things, keeping the football program going, keeping the community, and I'm involved in different things. And it's just something that you don't want to see things that are good, and you have to understand what you feel are the good things about a community, all the good that is in a community. You want to try to keep those things going, and I want to be a part of that in a little way.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a politician. I'm not, but and you know, I've always looked at, well, I'm retired. What can I do? And I think you know, I'm not I can do a little bit of this. I've got an agricultural background. My construction background. I'm not great at anything like that, you know, but I can work with young people,
Yeah.
you know. And I thought, well, especially with the type of kids that I work with.
Yeah.
So I still try to keep my hand in that by doing volunteer work and things like that to keep a little part of it. I think if everybody does a little part of
Amen.
it, what they feel good about,
That's right.
and not try to go out and overdo and
Yeah.
something, but just try to do something to keep things going.
Did the expectations that you created, did you feel the weight of that in the midst of your success when you were at those high levels? Did you feel it?
At one time,
Yeah.
I did.
I can imagine.
I did, and I developed an ulcer, and I had some health problems, and there was the expectations of what I was supposed to do and what I was supposed to do as a parent.
Yeah.
And that's when I started throwing some things out. I said, hey, I've got to quit doing this, and I've got to spend more time, you know. I had to make some changes.
Yeah.
Because there was a couple points there that I had too much for me to handle, and I had to step back. And for me to keep on going, I had to make some changes in my life.
Well, and this has been a great conversation, and I had high expectations for the things that you might say from these questions I had put together, but Coach, there were things you revealed in your heart that were just humbling and awesome and inspiring for me to hear, even exceeding any expectations I had. And I don't know how long this podcast will run, but it would have not been complete if I had never asked you to be on here. And I was hoping so bad when I called you. My wife knew I was excited to hear that yes, I'd be glad to do it, and I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. And you were a great mentor for me, a great adversary, and a blessing, Coach, to so many students, other faculty members, coaches, players, and the game of football in Southern Illinois was blessed by you being a part of it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you,
Appreciate
Kerry.
it.
I just admire the heck out of what you've done, and just have watched everything also. And I can't ever forget that game at Carter. And
I didn't bring it up.
Thought, man, that was a great game.
It was.
That was a great game.
It was.
And it was a great game. And then you went on and beat the heck out of Spring Valley Hall. And that was great too.
Yeah.
But it was a great game.
Yeah,
and
it
you know,
was.
when you do something like that, and you can still, it was just a great.
Yeah.
You never forget those things.
No, you don't.
You admire people, and like at Sparta, I knew, and going up to Salem to Coach's Clinic and Chuck Buddy, and you under Chuck Buddy, and then to see how well you coached, it was just like, hey, these guys, he's a good young coach. You know?
Thanks. Well, it means a lot coming from you. And I often tell people I don't know what I would put on my resume if I had to go apply for a job. But the fact that I am 1-1 against Al Martin is the greatest thing ever. So the fact that I'm 500 against you, enough said. I ought to get the job right there. So not many guys can say that because I only had to play you twice, thank goodness. But thanks again. I want to thank the Swinford Media Group for letting this happen because there's so much amazing information coming from these coaches every week, and in particular from Al today. I want to thank, the Crown Brew again. I want to thank, appreciate those guys at Adrenaline, give them a shout out. And thanks, Ross, for being here today. And we appreciate you tuning in, watching or listening, whatever you're doing. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks.